Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Maze and this is Maze Score. Today we're going to be talking about something that is interesting. I'm not going too much in depth, but disabilities. Specifically, the word disability. So I've noticed this new movement going around lately where people are trying to take away the word disability and change it to differently abled. Now there's some pros and cons to this, and I think we can do both, but I also don't care if we do or not. Let me explain. So first we gotta look at the word disability at its root. The prefix dis means not. So essentially the word disability means not able, implying that someone is not able to do something. Now this makes sense because we have people who are blind, who are not able to see, or people who are deaf, who are not able to hear, people who can't walk, who are not able to walk, people who are dyslexic, who are not able to read, doesn't work there. People who are dyslexic, people who have learning disabilities, even mental disorders, depending on the mental disorder, are able to do things. They're able to do anything that a neurotypical person is able to do. So we'll take dyslexics for example, because that's just an easy one for me to explain. For someone who's dyslexic, they use their brain a little bit differently to get the same information. Despite what some people may think, and certain conversations I've had, dyslexics can read. I know, crazy. As a dyslexic, I love reading. I thought I hated reading for a really long time. Turns out I love it, just not in the traditional sense. I like researching and I like nonfiction. Don't as much like reading fiction. But I can still read fiction. I'm still capable of reading fiction. It's just not my preference. So the way a dyslexic's brain work is there's two different paths and both of them will get, actually everyone, there's different pathways you can get the same information. Typically, people's brains pick a specific pathway because it's easy and it's simple. With dyslexics, that pathway may not work or may not be as effective for them, so their brain uses a different pathway to get the same information. Most cases, the not reading can also affect left and right, up and down, various things like that, spelling, grammar, etc. So the easiest way for me to explain this is give more of a visualization. Sorry guys. So we'll say that you're walking in the woods and you come to a fork in the road. Now you can take a left or a right. If you take a left or a right, you're either way going to end up in the same destination. The biggest difference though is if you take a left, you are going to be there faster, it's going to be quicker, easier, but if you take a right, it's going to be a little bit longer. There might be some branches you have to go over, maybe some annoying mosquitoes, who knows. It's going to be harder and longer. So the brain obviously is going to pick the left pathway because that is the easiest one to go by. But with a dyslexic, that one, we'll say a huge tree fell in front of and there's no way to go that way. They're still able to get to the same destination, they just can't do it the same. So if we're talking about differently abled, the term differently abled actually suits dyslexics much better than disabled does. Here's the problem though. With a lot of social movements, and let's be real, trying to change the term disability to differently abled is a social thing. We can do it. It could be great. I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference, to be honest. I think it's just people spending more energy on things that aren't going to make that big of a difference. People like to spend their time on pointless things, and while I do think it would suit certain disabilities to call them differently abled, that's not necessarily what that movement is suggesting. It's trying to get rid of the term disability entirely, which the term disability is not a bad thing whatsoever. It's just a thing, just like differently abled is just a thing. Putting a positive twist on it doesn't make it any different. It doesn't change what a person's struggles are. Now, if we look more in depth into why people even have disabilities, why are people labeled disabilities or labeled to have disabilities? Well, it's so they can get proper help, so they can get accommodations where they need it, so they can get services. A blind person needs to be labeled blind so they can go to the proper school to get a proper education, or so they can learn certain things, so they can have, I don't know, parking passes, whatever it may be, so they can get the help and services that they need, just like a dyslexic. They may need an IEP or a 504 plan, depending on their severity. They may need extra tutoring, extra help, different things like that are going to help them. And that's the purpose of diagnosing people. I've noticed there's this kind of trend, and I even felt susceptible to it myself in my younger years, which I get it, I'm still young, but more so my teenage years, is that people look at disabilities or the labeling of disabilities as almost like a personality. It's kind of like when you get a personality test, you're like, yes, this explains exactly who I am. Your disability doesn't define you. It may explain some of your struggles. It may explain why you're good at certain things, because let's not forget, especially when we're looking at learning disabilities, there's also great strengths that come contrary to the weaknesses. Like dyslexics, for example, tend to have a higher imagination. Despite what people may think, they make better writers. They might struggle with the grammatical errors, but they end up having a better voice, imagination, etc. They're better at visualizing than your neurotypical person. We can't forget that either. But then we look at the reason why people are diagnosed. For me, I was diagnosed so I could get help, so I could get accommodations. But I've also experienced being diagnosed without having any help at all. When I was in 6th grade, I was slapped the diagnosis of processing disorders: visual processing disorder, auditory, and sensory. When I was younger, people told me that I should have occupational therapy, but I didn't qualify for it. That doesn't make any sense. We can't just diagnose people with things and let them be like, yeah, that's just who you are, because it doesn't define. It's such a small part of your life. Having a disability or being differently abled isn't the end-all be-all. It's not who you are. It's not a personality test. It's just so you get accommodations. When I was 19 years old, I got told by a therapist that I was probably autistic. I'd been tested for autism before, and it came off as negative. And I mean, it's not really a negative positive test, but it came off as I wasn't. And she had gone through my records, and she was like, honestly, I don't think they did a good in-depth test. They only did a partial test. I truly believe that if you had a full test done, you would be diagnosed with autism. Do you want to get retested? And I thought about it for a really long time. And while I do consider myself autistic, I've never been fully diagnosed because I've never cared to get tested. The reason being is because at that point in my life, I'd been diagnosed with so many different comorbidities that getting diagnosed with autism wasn't going to make a difference. It wasn't going to get me any more help because I was already getting the help I needed. And it wasn't going to get me any more accommodations for an IEP or a 504 plan. I already had an IEP. We have to look at this objectively when we diagnose people. And we have to actually be giving them help rather than just medication. So I know I said a lot in this video. Please let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think. I'll probably do future videos to go more in depth about some of the things that I talked about or mentioned, but I wanted to keep it kind of short and simple. I'm still new to this, so let me know what you guys think. Should we be calling it differently abled? Should we call everything differently abled to give it a positive spin? Should we just keep it disability and just leave it as it is because it's just a word, but words do matter? So there's a whole debate on this. Let me know what you guys think, and let me know what you guys think about being diagnosed. Do you agree with me that people are diagnosed so they could get proper help, or do you think it's more than that? Alright, well, I look forward to hearing from you guys, and I post videos on Thursdays, mostly on Saturdays as well, and whenever I feel like it. So please let me know. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.